Good evening. We're going to be presenting a lot of information tonight in a lot of different areas. And what I really want to point out to you first, which seems to be really confusing, it was confusing last night, and so I want to start with that, is we are starting grades 4 through 12 at home. And that's a point that's very confusing. But you still have a choice to make for your students who are in grade 4 through 12. And what I mean by that is if you are interested in your child coming back physically into the schools this year, then you need to be thinking about and asking questions about the in-person continuum. And you're going to hear the word temporarily remote, because that's what we are if you choose in-person and you want your kids here. So even though 4 through 12 is not starting in school, if you want them in school at some point, whether it's a blended model or once we open 5 days a week, that's what you should be looking towards. And you're still going to hear information about totally virtual. You may change your mind as you hear that. But now, if you're really looking at, I have to keep my family and my children safe with the unknowns of the coronavirus, then you probably ought to be looking at 100% virtual option. And that will be for the entire first semester. And you'll also hear the in-person option is a decision for the entire year. And the reason we just can't flip-flop back and forth is we have to staff our teachers for either one of those models. So it's not as easy as some people may think to flip-flop those. But I want you to keep this in mind. Safety is still a #1 priority. So if you're in the in-person model, and that is starting for pre-K through 3, those kids are coming A-B schedule every other day. Of course, you're still concerned about safety. We understand that. And so you may be thinking, well, the cases may tick up in Iowa County, this region. That's going to make me nervous. I then want to go virtual. You're still protected because now that the board has voted, the decision-making now goes to myself and my team and through cooperation with the Virginia Department of Health. So as we get cases, I may close down a classroom. I do not have to call a board meeting to do that. I will be working with health professionals. We may have to close down a school for a short period of time. Or we may say, enough is enough, and we are going remote for pre-K through 3 due to cases and health reasons. So if you're worried about that, just because you're in the in-person continuum, if there are health crisis arises and those numbers tick up, I'm closing the school. So you need to keep that in mind as we go through the presentation. We're going to stop periodically through the presentation and let you ask questions multiple times through. And people who are viewing this can be sending questions as well. We had 17 pages of questions. We answered almost all of them today. Those are being posted this evening. The remaining questions we get will be posted tomorrow for you to view those questions and go through them. So we still want you to ask lots of questions. They may already be out there and answered, but it's all right. Ask those questions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan Getz, who's the Executive Director of Leadership.
All right, thank you, Dr. Thornton. Good evening, everyone. We're going to jump right into the presentation. Let me grab my clicker. Okay, so let's just do an overview of what tonight is going to be about, what you're going to hear. We're going to begin by talking about pre-K through 3, and we're going to talk about those options and explain to you what that's going to look like. We're going to move into health mitigation, then technology. We'll then talk about the 4 to 12 options for parents. Talk a little bit about CTE, athletics is in there as well, transportation, and then finally, how do you make your selection moving forward for your children. I will say the pre-K through 3 we'll try to go through as quickly as we can. We know we have some 4 through 12 parents who may not be interested in everything pre-K through 3, but it's still relevant in the event that we do go to an A-B model for 4 through 12. The things that you hear about pre-K through 3 on the A-B model, that's going to apply if and when we are able to go to an A-B model for grades 4 through 12. So not relevant right at this moment, but hopefully it will become relevant. A few terms that I'm going to be mentioning a lot that I really want you to just be aware of so that you're not confused by everything we're talking about. Synchronous learning, you're going to hear synchronous days, you're going to hear asynchronous days. Synchronous days are those days where live instruction is occurring, okay, with the teacher and your child. This might be in person if you're a pre-K through 3, or it might be through Zoom, okay, but it's synchronous. It's a live teacher working with your child. Asynchronous is learning that occurs without live instruction. So on alternating A-B days, A day might be the synchronous, B day would be the asynchronous. You do not have a live teacher, but learning is still happening. Remote learning, learning that occurs outside of the school building, and this would be the option 1. So when we start back to school, grades 4 through 12, they're going to be temporarily remote. Learning is still happening, but it's outside of the school building. Virtual learning, that's going to be option 2. Those are the students who are 100% virtual. Parents have elected they're not coming to school. Even if we have in person, you're not coming to school. Those are virtual students. And then lastly, Canvas. Canvas is just a learning management system that we are utilizing. It has been adopted and purchased by the state of Virginia, and it is free to all school divisions in Virginia. And it simply is a vehicle for us to be able to deliver our teaching and for students to be able to show what they're able to do at home. So it's just the vehicle for that teaching and learning. It will house our curriculum. So we're very excited to have Canvas. It's simple to use. Lots of schools and colleges use it currently throughout the country, and we will be training our teachers on that. Okay, so what are you deciding? You're deciding between option 1 and option 2. Option 1 is the in-person continuum. So in that model, we will begin on an A-B schedule for pre-K through 3. This is a commitment for the entire year. So what you're saying is, if we are allowed to bring students into the building, I want that option for my children. So if in-person is available, I want my child in school. If that is your belief, you should select option 1. If you, on the other hand, you feel nervous about sending your child, maybe there's underlying health conditions of your children or family members, you don't want your children to come to school, you should select option 2. Option 2 is 100% virtual learning. Now, there's a few things to keep in mind with option 2. You really need to have reliable high-speed internet to be most effective, okay? Parents are going to have to assume a larger role in supporting children in learning because children are going to be on their own, working independently. It is a commitment for the first semester. So in January, you will have the option to leave virtual learning and go to in-person if that's available. And unfortunately, we don't know what the future is going to hold. We don't know what it's going to look like in January. But your commitment for virtual learning is September through January. And then you will be able to decide if you want to continue virtual or you may want to switch to in-person at that time. So you might have seen this before, but basically on option 1, which is our in-person continuum, it simply shows you that pre-K through 3 will start in the blended model. So if you select this, you will have teachers who are dedicated in-person teachers. These are the kids, your kids will be assigned, they will go to school, they'll be in a class with teachers who are dedicated to your children. Parents who select the virtual model will also have dedicated elementary teachers, pre-K through 3, on the virtual model. Okay, so they're not going to be doing both in pre-K through 3. The blended model is going to look something like this, or will look like this. We're going to have a group of students. Some of the students will be A-day students. The rest of the class will be B-day students. So we're essentially taking the students who want option 1, we're dividing them in half. Part of them will be A-day students, the other part will be B-day students. So if you just look at the top for the A-day students, the synchronous, that's the in-person learning, would happen on Monday and Wednesday. And that's going to be consistent, Monday and Wednesday, okay? And then Tuesday and Thursday, that A-day students will be at home doing their remote learning. Okay, and we're going to dive deeper and talk about that further. So your daily schedule is reflective of traditional in-person learning. So when your student came to school, they had core classes, they had elective classes, they had PE. We're still going to do that. We feel it's very important to get those little children back in school and have as normal of a schedule as we possibly can have while physically distancing. So yes, we are going to have core classes. Yes, we are going to have resource classes. Yes, we are going to have recess. It's going to look different. So in recess, kids will not be allowed to play on the equipment, swings, so forth. However, we will have other activities for them to do that will be fun, get their wiggles out a little bit, but they're going to be more individualized. For example, sidewalk chalk, bubble balloon wands, things of that nature. So like I said, get the wiggles out, but it's not going to be the traditional hop on the equipment, slides, and that kind of thing. Lunch will be served in the classroom, so you can either pack a lunch or your child can buy lunch. It will be brought to the classroom. Kids will eat in the classrooms. We do have cleaning in place, and we'll talk about that more in detail later, about how it's going to be cleaned. Your child will have limited transitions throughout the day. The whole point is trying to keep them contained in a cohort as much as possible, so they're not mixing with other students. Physically distanced seating within the classroom, so we will be able to maintain physical distancing while in the classroom. We will not have more than 12 students in a class, so they will be able to spread out. Students will have devices. All students will be given a device. That device will be used in the classroom. It needs to go home each night to be used and used the next day, and it needs to come back again for their in-person learning, fully charged and ready to go. On the in-person day, at the end of the day, every child will be given the opportunity to download work. That work will be downloaded to be used on the day that they are not in person, so on their remote day at home. If you have good high-speed internet and you don't need that, then this probably isn't a concern to you. But if you don't have great internet access in your home or where your child is going to be on the day that they're doing their remote learning, then they will be able to download the assignments to be completed offline at home. So grades are a big question, and students are going to receive traditional grades. Grades will be just like they are and they have been in the past years. Third grade will receive letter grades. The smaller children receive more of just performance feedback. Students will continue to have reading conferences. If you're familiar with ARC and you know about the reading conferences, those are still going to happen. And students will also receive feedback on performance in general. So this is not going to be like it was in March. This is going to be very much a two-way street. Your child's going to be performing, completing assignments, doing work, and your teacher will be evaluating, assessing, and providing feedback to the students. Attendance is required, and a daily attendance will be taken. If your child is absent, then you should send in a note to the school, contact the school just like you've always done. So obviously on the in-person days, it's going to look very simple of you're present, you're here, you're counted as attendant, as being present. For the days at home, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But if you are completing the assignments as scheduled, then you're considered present. School visitors, unfortunately, given our circumstances, we're not going to be able to have visitors in the school like we have loved to do in the past. It's going to look a little different. So parents will have to, they will have to come to school only for like specific reasons. They have a meeting scheduled. You're dropping off medication, or if you have to pick your child up or bring a child in late. Lunches. A lot of times parents are used to coming to visit for lunch. That's not going to be able to happen, at least in the beginning, because we're really going to limit people who are mingling with the students. We're trying to maintain those cohorts. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mike Lombardo. He's our assistant superintendent. He's going to talk about the asynchronous days.
Okay, so what we'll do is take a look at the days on the hybrid schedule when the students are actually at home engaged in learning. So you can see here that, again, the main tool that they'll have for the remote learning would be the device that we are going to issue the students. So they'll use their device to access Canvas, the learning management system that Mrs. Getz described. And this kind of gives you an idea. So for pre-K through 3, you're talking about approximately 2 to 3 hours of work to be done on the remote learning day from home. And a lot of this is going to seem very familiar if you already have had your children in the school system at this age group. 30 minutes of independent reading, 30 to 45 minutes of some additional review material, 20 minutes of a pre-recorded video around new learning. So I want to make special note of that. The previous day, your child was at school with his or her teacher. Today, the next day, they're at home for the day of remote learning. But we want new learning to continue on the asynchronous day. So what the teachers will be doing is recording videos of themselves doing a mini lesson. And so you can see here that the students will watch that recorded video of their teacher, and then you can see following that, there's a follow-up activity that would tie directly to whatever that new learning video was about. Teachers will provide a schedule of assignments and the approximate times. I think that'll be a great help to the parents and guardians at home. When the assignments are completed on the remote days, that's really at the discretion of the parent. You need to do what works best for your home, but again, we want to give you samples as far as time frames, and also we'll share with you sample as far as what might that schedule look like at home for your child on the asynchronous day. Might be something you just want to go ahead and use that sample schedule that the teacher provides. And then the assignments, because of the way the teachers are going to build out each week, it is very important that the children complete the assignments on their asynchronous day at home, because the next day will build upon those when they're back at school. So they need to make sure they keep up with their assigned work. This next part, you know this very well. And I know this, but it's good just to restate the fact that it's so important to have that designated space, time, and setting those real clear routines and procedures at home, no different than we do at school in the classroom. So this is just a reminder to really consider if on that remote learning day, the asynchronous day from home, what is that space that's developed for your child to engage in their learning activities? Okay, so I think this is really powerful for the asynchronous learning days. This is a sample schedule. And of course, remember, as the parents and guardians, you have tremendous autonomy here and flexibility. This is simply a resource, but what we're going to do is have all of our teachers provide these types of schedules for the children and their parents and guardians so that you have an example to use on these days at home. So let me just kind of take you through. You can see here, it kind of lays out. You start off at 9 in the morning, watch a reading video on Canvas, complete the reading assignment, do some independent reading, and then you can see your ST Math. So it's just an example. Note that video, that recorded video, though, is actually your child's teacher teaching them a lesson that's been recorded. So the child has some new learning. And then you can see a little time for lunch, and again, real important, some physical activity time. And then to re-engage in their schoolwork. Example here from 1 o'clock to 2:15, but you can see it follows a similar format to above, watching the math mini lesson video that the teacher created. So you can imagine maybe the teacher's doing a mini lesson, they have some manipulatives, they're teaching a math skill, and then you can see following that the students are engaged in an activity related to that new learning. And then maybe there's a science or social studies activity. So again, this is just an example, but hopefully it gives you a good feel of what that might look like on the day that they're at home with you, and how our teachers are going to provide you with a resource like this to help you in the decision you make as to what this day looks like. So at this point, we're going to take a little breather, and we're going to answer any questions that you might have specifically about the material that we just grouped and covered regarding this, the in-person and also the asynchronous days for our pre-K through 3. So we'd be happy to answer any questions, and I think Ms. Briggs is probably monitoring the live stream as well. So if we get any questions coming in on the live stream, we'll share them with the whole group. Okay. Yeah, so the question is related to the devices that we'll be issuing the students, and then those devices actually connecting to a high-speed internet service in different parts of the county. Is that correct? Okay, so if you have high-speed internet at home, that's easy, right? You know you have good connectivity, and these devices will connect, and the children will be off and running with their work from their device. We also have, let's say you don't have that high-speed connection at your home. We do have a boosted signal at all 9 school locations. So from our school parking lot, you could access high-speed internet. We will also have buses, as we did from the spring, in some of remote locations to allow for access to high-speed internet. One other piece that I'll mention is every student will have the ability on the in-person learning day. We're going to build in a little bit of time at the end of the day where they can literally download the content for the next day when they're learning from home. And it will be on their device, so they wouldn't have to connect to the internet the next day from home on their asynchronous day. Everything they needed that we described would already be downloaded to their device. So that would be another way that we would allow those devices to provide the learning activities that are necessary, even if the student doesn't have that connection at home. So we're trying to provide some different options for families. And in this model, the great thing is when the child's at school, they can download the content for the next day. That really works well in the hybrid model when connectivity is an issue.
So that's a great question. And the question was, have we sampled different areas of the county to see where we have it or we don't have those good connections? And so we have done some of that work, and we started that in March when we shut down. And there's 2 things going on. One, you may not have internet available, but the other issue that is the bigger problem and a main concern with us is if there's no cellular, it doesn't matter if you have a hotspot or anything else, you're not going to have service. So for people in those areas, and we'll talk about that later with the virtual option, that's going to be a problem. But with this model, you're downloading, like Mike said, you're downloading the work at school. So for this model, it's not a big concern. The virtual model, we're going to talk more about that. But we are doing things on the form that you will fill out choosing your school. There'll be a section asking you questions that the state provided about internet. So we'll know individually who's having that difficulty, and we're going to follow up. We may go to verify to those areas, and we're looking at options. There are some options out there, but that is a major concern, and we may not be able to solve that in all areas. But we are exploring many options, and once we have that data, we'll be able to bring more clarity to that.
Any other questions?
Okay, so the question is, are the students required to accept an Isle of Wight County school device and use that if you have a device that would serve the purpose already? And the answer to that is no. You would not be required to accept the device that we are offering. We're going to provide every student with a device, but if a family says we don't want or need that device, we have one that will serve this purpose, that's your option, absolutely.
The question is, will special education students still receive their specialized services? So like occupational therapy, physical therapy, those sorts of things.
Okay, so yes, special education students will receive services. We will talk more about that, but basically in this model, if you have a pre-K through 3 student, your child will be able to come on the AB day and receive special education services when they are present. The services are going to be adjusted to match the time that we are in school. So in some cases, depending on the minutes or the services, if we're in school 2 days a week, it might not be possible to offer, but we will do it at a reduced rate based on, the days we're coming and how much you had in the IEP. There will be IEP meetings. We're hoping to get them all done before school starts, but there'll be IEP meetings to determine what those minutes and services will look like. But yes, on this model, we are planning to offer services, yes.
One will be kind of laughing at the response there. We already received notification about our IEP saying that we already had a meeting. We didn't have a meeting, and our son's IEP has been set for the year.
So the concern is that his IEP has already been set for the year. And I could just let you, that an IEP is a living, breathing document, and so even if it was amended at the end of last school year, it can still be amended, and we will meet with all students and their families to address those concerns based on our current
Okay, so
reality.
We'll get notification again, scheduling another meeting before school starts.
Yes.
So we will have to adjust based on what our current model is moving forward. We are going to have to adjust all of the students' IEPs to meet the model that is being offered. So it was probably the annual meeting was held, but we're going to have to update based on this model. Okay, Ms. Briggs, anything that we should take? Any questions? Okay, we're good to go. All right.
Okay, so we'll continue on. And within the pre-K through 3 blended AB model that we've described to you, when students are at school, we want to share with you in detail the mitigation strategies that are being put in place around, obviously, safety. So here you can see face coverings required if you cannot physically distance at least 6 feet. So this would be in common areas, buses, hallways, and also classrooms when you cannot physically distance at least 6 feet. And here you can see a whole bunch of strategies related to hand sanitizer stations throughout the buildings. Classrooms, we're providing hand sanitizer bottles. Classes will receive a supply of disinfectant wipes. Classrooms will also receive a Virex disinfectant spray bottle. They will also have bottle filling stations in all of the schools, so we won't be using traditional water fountains as we know them. We're going to be using the safe water filling stations. Those are already being installed. Staff will refer students to the clinic who display COVID-19-like symptoms. We'll get into detail on that in a later slide. And the school nurse will notify the nursing supervisor and follow health-appropriate protocols when that student arrives who is exhibiting any symptoms. And we'll get into the protocols a little bit later in the presentation. More on some of the mitigation strategies related to health. Here specifically related to cleaning. So cleaning high-touch areas 3 times daily at a minimum, and there's a lot of high-touch areas in a school, as we know. Areas like switches, railings, doors. Classrooms will be cleaned. Those areas will be cleaned. Desks, tables, counters. We'll have lunch in the classrooms. Obviously, we're trying to limit movement, stay away from any type of gatherings in common spaces. So we'll have lunch in classrooms, and SSC, who provides our custodial services, they'll wipe down tables after lunch in the elementary classrooms. And Ms. Getz, I believe that's when they go to recess?
Correct.
Correct. And then, and this is for secondary students. If they're back in school, this is just there as a note that disinfecting wipes would be used, and those students would just quickly wipe down their desk area so that then they could eat their lunch at a nice clean desktop. The hand sanitizer stations will be checked frequently. Restrooms are obviously very important as far as cleanliness. They'll be checked hourly and cleaned 3 times daily at a minimum. Custodians and our assistant principals, they're going to sign off after they do those checks. So we'll have a sign-off sheet so we can really monitor that those spaces are being cleaned, checked, and signed off on. So we'll have classroom disinfectant foggers. So if we get in a situation where we have a classroom that needs a much more deep cleaning, then we have such tools as the disinfectant fogger. We also have the electrostatic sprayers to be used if necessary. And SSC, again, our custodial services, they are increasing the staffing for the pre-K3 model during the school hours to meet the needs of this increased cleaning and mitigation. So just a little bit more on the mitigation. As you can expect, there's a lot in place for the health and safety. So here, you can see a picture on the top right there. Plexiglass barriers, such as the one you see, are installed in the front offices and in our nursing clinics. Individual instructional supplies will be used. So we don't want the students sharing instructional supplies. They'll come with their instructional supplies, and they'll maintain just their supplies and use those. We'll have lots of signage throughout the buildings and on the property. We'll limit access, as I said, to common areas. We're also limiting movement. Students will have movement, but it won't be the traditional type of movement that you would have seen. As Mrs. Getz said, we are going to limit school visitors to the building. And also, we get a lot of community facility use requests for our buildings, and that's wonderful, but we really do need to limit that at this point to, again, maintain those clean, safe spaces. Okay, so shifting gears to staff and some of the health mitigation that's in place for the adults working with your children. So face coverings, again, just like with the students, would be required if you cannot physically distance at least the 6 feet. Face coverings should completely cover the mouth and nose. They should not contain the valve. That's per CDC right now. And also the gator type, the UV type protection, should not be used in place of a face covering. So we're really talking about the kinds of face coverings that I see you all wearing at this time. Other PPE, such as face shields, might be used, might be even required, depending on what that staff member's responsibility is and which students they're working with. And the next blurb, that third bullet, really just speaks to a face shield might be used, but it can't replace the face covering, like the cloth face covering. So even if a teacher is using that face shield, they would still be required to have the cloth, for instance, face covering. We're going to promote physical distancing and limit gatherings in spaces like conference room, workspaces, break rooms for staff. So they'll do a lot of their meetings virtually, and if they are together physically in a space, then we'll follow the guidelines and socially distance. Employees will frequently be washing their hands and sanitizing hands. We've heard, obviously, that's one of the #1 strategies for all of us to use. And staff will self-monitor using the symptom questionnaire and self-report. And so we're going to ask all staff members to use the self-check, the questionnaire, and we'll talk about what that looks like for you all at home and for your students as well. So I think Dr. Kale, who is our Director of Professional Development, will take over here with some of our protocols.
Good evening. So we want you to know that we are working very closely and monitoring information from the CDC every single day. We are looking for their updates and finding out what has changed, what is new, what do we need to alter in our own practices. A few things that we know you see out in the community, but that may or may not be recommended for schools. So, for example, the CDC does not currently recommend mass temperature checking for schools. So it's just not as effective as they had hoped it would be, and it actually creates a backlog of students trying to get into the building at one time. Parents and caregivers are strongly encouraged to monitor your children for signs and symptoms of COVID-19. And if they have those, or if they're running a high fever or a fever over 100.4, you really should be keeping them at home. Students who are sick should not come to school in person at all. And I think that that's one of those old-fashioned rules, but now it causes an added pressure because the signs and symptoms of COVID mirror so many other common ailments, like common colds and flus. That. So you'll have access to this. This is a daily home screening for students. I know it's kind of hard to see here, the questions, but it does ask you to check certain things each day. So take your child's temperature before they leave the house or get on the bus. Make sure that they aren't exhibiting COVID-like symptoms. And then if your child is exhibiting those symptoms, follow that attendance policy piece and just give the school a call or send in a note that says they're going to be absent because they're not feeling well. So the protocol for symptomatic or confirmed cases, and this protocol applies to staff and students. So if we have a student who comes in and they are illustrating or demonstrating any of the symptoms that are part of COVID-19, they will be sent directly to the nurse. So the teacher will call the nurse, they'll be sent down to the nurse, and they'll be placed in a separate space that the nurse is also monitoring and managing, but away from other students who are coming in for like daily medications or things like that. And then there isn't any contact tracing that is associated with that student just because they have a symptom. That all changes when a student tests positive or a staff member tests positive. So if we have a confirmed case, that individual is isolated, contact tracing begins, and our nurses are working directly with the Virginia Department of Health. They are being trained on how to actually conduct contact tracing and report that information accurately. And then individuals identified through that contact tracing would also be isolated for 14 days. Okay. So a couple of things from the CDC that kind of guide our practices around how long a student has to be out or someone has to be out if they are experiencing COVID or if they're tested positive for COVID or they've been in contact with someone with COVID. If you know that you had symptoms, those are the people that are, definite, I know that I had it, they have to be away from school for at least 10 days since their symptoms first appeared. And they have to, and these are all ands, these are not either or. And they have to have gone 24 hours without a fever, without the use of fever-reducing medication. So no fever on their own. And their COVID-19 symptoms have to have improved. So they shouldn't be experiencing shortness of breath or loss of taste and smell, those sorts of things any longer. if you tested positive for COVID-19, but you had no symptoms. So these are those asymptomatic people. We don't really know for certain that they have it. They just found out because they got a test. If those people continue to have no symptoms, then they are to stay away from others or self-isolate for 10 days. And so long as those symptoms don't show up, once those 10 days have passed, they are good to go. If you become severely ill with COVID-19, so if a student or a staff member becomes severely ill, they need to be aware, or you need to be aware, that they could have to isolate for more than 10 days. 10 days is that standard protocol, but if you are really, really sick, this could be up to 20 days. And then if you've just been around someone who has tested positive for COVID-19, if you have been in close contact, you should self-isolate for 14 days after that exposure. But if you have come in close contact with someone in the past 3 months and you developed COVID-19 symptoms and your symptoms have gone away, you have recovered, and you remain without symptoms, then you can return back to being with everyone else. So what questions do you have for us about mitigation or about protocols for healthy versus sick? So the question is, your child has an ear infection and that's diagnosed by the doctor, and he has a runny nose as a result of that, does he have to stay home for 10 days?
So we just talked to the doctor from the Virginia Department of Health, and so I guess I'm going to answer it this way first, because we were asked this question about what if a teacher's worried and a child has the sniffles, and it may be because of allergies. So we know people are going to be concerned, and they're going to send that child to the nurse, and when they go to the nurse is going to call home and do some history with the parents. Is this a normal thing that occurs every year with this child? Is your child asthmatic? What are those underlying issues? They're then going to call the local health department and relay that information, and the health experts are going to help tell us, yes, that child needs to go home and isolate. And in some of the cases, what he said was, and I think this pertains more to your question, it may be an earache. And so what the nurse may say, and the local health department is, you need to go see your doctor. And if your doctor handles that case and says the child can come back, then that's a different situation. So we're going to err on the side of caution, but we're also going to use common sense and do history checks with people and really communicate with families and the local health department.
Mitigation kind of elementary, middle and high school. Before the next school board meeting, are you all having a plan in place where, I'm afraid they're going to say, oh, you can't, high school can't become hybrid because they have to change between the classes. So are you all going to have something in place so that they can't use that as a reason that the kids can't go back to school if we're still the same, like phase 3, like everything's still the same?
Okay. So the question is that before we are able to before the board votes on bringing back middle and high school students, and she's concerned about the cohorting and the mixing, would we have a mitigation plan in place that would take care of that vote goes forward?
So are you talking about what are the mitigation plans for 4 through 12?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the mitigations that you saw would be very similar for 4 through 12. And I would say in the middle school level, we will try to cohort. We'll even cohort some electives where in the past students may have had a wide variety of electives. We may shrink that amount and to keep them in those cohorts. And like in the past, we may have students who are taking, say, Algebra 1 in 8th grade, and they may be with other students who don't take Algebra 1 in science. Those students we will leave together and cohort, again, for protection and to minimize the exposure to large amounts of people. At the high school is the biggest concern because you have earth science, you have Algebra 1, you have geometry. You may be in 9th grade taking geometry, and you also may be in 10th grade taking geometry. And then your electives. There's no way to cohort high school. So that's the biggest concern. So if it is in an A-B model, again, that will be a small amount. If we can get help from our students and help from our parents, and we transition in those hallways, and we don't linger and hug each other and wear our masks and get to where we're going, that will help. Because as far as isolating and stuff, and what the CDC says, it's sustained within 6 feet for over 15 minutes. So if you get on with your business, we can do it. And you guys are watching the news too, and some of these schools that are open up at the high school level, these students are not wearing masks in the hallway. That is going to be mandatory, and I'm glad this question came up. When we're disciplining students for different stuff through the years, depending on their age, we may have a little more tolerance, and we're training them, and that's part of the learning process. But for this, you need to be part of the solution. If you're not going to wear your mask, I'm going to remove you from school. If you're not following the safety guidelines and you're going to put someone else in danger, we're calling your parents right away. You're not getting multiple chances over and over. And we cannot allow that with what's going on if we want to keep our schools open and have our kids in school, which is what we want. We know that's good for our kids.
She's just asking that you would reiterate that message to the school board when they are making that next decision.
Absolutely.
So the question is that if your student is on the hybrid model, so they're doing the in-person and the remote, and they get sick and have to stay home for 10 to 14 days, but they're not so sick that they can't do work, how would they continue with keeping up with their class?
Okay, so that would be treated in the hybrid model, that would be treated just like it has been treated in the past. So you would reach out to your school, let them know that your child is sick, and assignments can be given. They can be sent to Canvas, they can post assignments, you can pick up, but it'll be treated just as it has been treated in the past if you're on the hybrid model.
One of the things to consider with that question is also that on the time when the child's at home, because as Mrs. Getz said, they'll have access to all of the content through the Canvas learning management system, those new learning videos that the teacher is creating quickly for the remote learning days, those are going to be weekly available for the child who's sick. So there are some benefits to having the learning management system in that scenario. Okay.
Okay, let's move on. We're now going to talk about option 2 for pre-K through 3rd grade parents, and this is the 100% virtual option. This is the option where you do not want your children coming to school, even if we open up 5 days a week. You don't want your child coming to school. You're more comfortable learning at home. And again, that's a semester decision. So on this block, parents will have the option to choose block 1 in the morning or block 2 for the afternoon. So you can select, if you're a morning person, have at it, you can start in the morning. You will notice that there will be synchronous Zoom schedule on Monday, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. So if I choose block 1, I am logging on at 9 o'clock. I'm going to Zoom with my teacher. My teacher will be there, whoever else is in the class at that time, and my teacher will deliver instruction. There will also be assignments given through Zoom that students will be working on. And again, this will be Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. On Wednesdays and Fridays, those are asynchronous, independent days where students are working at home with the assignments that the teachers have provided. And we're going to look in detail at each of these. But the important point for the parents is that you are selecting block 1 or you would be selecting block 2. And let's talk more about what that would look like. So on the asynchronous virtual learning days, so this is, I'm logging in, my teacher is there on Zoom for 2 hours. The framework will be followed, the Isle of Wight County School Instructional Framework. Our teachers are trained in this, they know how to use it, and it's what we've used in person, and it can also be transferred over to virtual learning. Let me explain how just a little bit. So let's say you have a kindergartner or first grader, so a young child, and that child is going to log on to Zoom at 9 a.m. You're probably thinking, oh my gosh, I cannot imagine a 5 or 6-year-old being on a Zoom for 2 hours straight. And you're right, that would be difficult. So they will be on Zoom, but different things are going to be happening during that 2-hour block. It's not going to be straight teacher talking and giving direct instruction for 2 hours to a child. There is an object in Zoom, where you can have breakout sessions. And in those breakout sessions, a teacher could have 6 students in their Zoom class, and they could put 2 students in a breakout room, they could put another 2 students in a breakout room, and they can give them independent assignments to be working on. So it's almost like when you think of stations in a classroom where kids rotate through stations, it's kind of like that virtually. And the teacher can bounce back and forth between different breakout rooms to give small group instruction, one-on-one instruction to the students. So even though the student will be logged into Zoom for 2 hours, there'll be different activities where the student might be engaged with the teacher or the student might be working on something independently for a period of time. So if parents are going to select, like I said, block 1 or block 2, it's up to 2 hours of live, age-appropriate instruction. So what is appropriate for kindergarten may not be appropriate for 3rd grade and vice versa. It's 3 days a week. All of these class meetings will be recorded and uploaded to Canvas. So if you are not able to participate in a Zoom one day, then that session will be uploaded to Canvas and you can view it at your convenience. In addition to the synchronous virtual learning model, so those 2 hours of synchronous virtual learning, students will also have to complete 30 minutes of independent reading. And if you are a parent and you've been here in elementary, you know we are serious about our 30 minutes of reading every day. We still want students to do that. In addition to that, there might be up to 60 minutes of additional assignments that students will work on independently. And that, of course, will be age appropriate. What's appropriate for that student? Teachers will provide a weekly agenda for parents each Friday by 5 in the afternoon, and that will contain what the schedule will look like for the following week, what assignments will be done, what topics will be covered, because we know parents are going to have to assume a large role in monitoring this, and we want to give you that information up front. Each student will be assigned a designated device. We already mentioned that. Before the Zoom starts, we ask that you have those devices fully charged and ready to go. And then we've also mentioned this before, but it's really important in the virtual learning environment that you set aside a space for your child that is comfortable, but not too comfortable that they want to fall asleep. It's free from distractions. Maybe the dog isn't nearby. And it's a good space for them to learn. And setting a good routine, waking up on the same time, going to bed at an early hour. Setting a good routine is important. Kids love routine. Okay, asynchronous days. I believe Dr. Kale is going to talk to you about the asynchronous.
All right, can you hear me? Yeah, there we go. All right, so on asynchronous days, these are their Wednesdays and their Fridays. And the good news about these days is that the schedule is flexible. It's kind of however you set it. So they're not logging into a Zoom for that interactive session for 2 hours. Instead, they can, if your kid's a morning person, you might set their learning time in the morning. If they're an evening person, you might set it later in the day. So on that day, it would be 2 to 3 hours max. And like Ms. Gatz said, that's going to be dependent on the age. That might include 30 minutes of that independent reading, 30 minutes of additional review material, so something that the teacher had talked about in class the day before or they're adding on to, a 20-minute pre-recorded video of new learning, so maybe she's setting the stage for Thursday when they meet again. And then it might have a follow-up assignment so that she can help understand where they are. And then maybe 30 minutes of ST Math and a 30-minute resource class. So even though students are virtual, we still want to make every effort to get them involved in PE, music, art, those sorts of things. And so we'll do our best to make those live sessions, but if they are not available live, depending on staffing, then we would certainly make them available as a video that a student could view in their Canvas account. Work should be completed, so work that is assigned for Wednesday would be due the next day when they come back to class. Okay? So this is just a sample schedule of what that might look like for maybe those early riser kids that got up, they had a great breakfast, they're ready to get started, it's 9 o'clock. So they log on at 9, they watch a little 15-minute video, then they do a reading assignment that goes with that video. They might work through another independent reading and maybe a resource class at that time. And now it's about 11 o'clock. So they're starting to wane and wax, And it's time for lunch or a good long break. They got outdoor activity, let them go get the willies out, eat and enjoy that lunch. And then around 1 o'clock, they might come back. They might start on the afternoon activities. So maybe they'll have a math video that's on Canvas and then a follow-up assignment that goes with that, followed by some practice on ST Math, and then maybe a science or social studies activity. The thing to remember about all of these is that no 2 remote days would look exactly the same. And the flexibility is there for you to decide what works best for your family. Teachers will respond to parent or student requests on those days. So if you have a question, you just email the teacher. You would do that. They will respond within 4 hours of 4 business hours. So obviously if you send them an email at 8 o'clock at night, you're probably not going to get a response by midnight, but they'll definitely respond to you first thing in the morning. But if you send them an email at 10, you should have a response by 2.
I want to add something right here and just pause for 1 second. We know that students are returning with gaps, and we know that that is something that all parents are very concerned about, and we are too. So on these Wednesdays, when your students may be doing their at-home learning, this is a great time, and our teachers are going to use this time to have small groups for your kids, work one-on-one with your kids. These Wednesdays are going to be used to fill those gaps, those achievement gaps, the gaps from not being in school since March. So just to be clear, those days will be scheduled. Teachers will let you know in advance. They will schedule Zooms. Like I said, it might be individual. It could be small group. It may not be that your child is involved in every Wednesday with a remediation Zoom, but it will happen on those Wednesdays. Fridays, we really are reserving for teachers to be able to plan. They have to record their videos. It is a lot of new learning for teachers as well to learn how to teach in this manner. And we have a lot of other meetings, such as IEP meetings and so forth. So Fridays are really going to be used for the teacher planning part. Wednesdays, we will be doing small groups to help fill in those gaps for our students.
So related to that piece, the Virginia Department of Education published the Recover, Redesign, and Restart guidance for all school divisions in the Commonwealth. And, you know, we're required to really build our plan around a lot of the essential questions and best practices within that. So as Mrs. Getz was describing, on that Wednesday in this model, that's where we can do a lot of the recover aspect of our plan for students who we know those gaps exist at this time.
All right, so this is just another sample schedule, and this might be for your late riser child. So they might get started around 10, do a couple of different activities, including a video that leads them to about 11:45, maybe closer to 12. Again, we encourage that good long break, that go outside and play, stretch, eat a good lunch. They might come back for a little while and watch a video and then complete a little reading assignment. They still haven't finished everything they need to do. So maybe after dinner, we've had another little rest time. Maybe after dinner, they come back and they do that science or social studies activity. Maybe their independent reading is kind of an evening activity for them, and then they would do their ST math. So this is just another sample schedule for those Wednesday and Friday remote days. For expectations, so as we shared with the PK3 AB model, those same expectations apply in the virtual world too. So students will continue to get grades in the way that they always have: tests, quizzes, classwork grades, and they'll continue to receive that individualized feedback on each assignment that they do, on their performance in class, on their reading conferences. So those things will continue. Daily attendance would be taken during the Zoom sessions when students are live and in that interactive with their teacher. And then attendance on the asynchronous days would be taken using a product-based metric. So did they complete the work that was assigned to them on their asynchronous day? If they've done the work to the best of their ability, then they are considered present. And just like in school, if your child is ill, you've got a doctor's appointment, what have you, they're not going to be there, you need to contact the school and provide that note, or just give us a call and let us know that they're absent for that day. So what questions do you have for us around the option 2 for pre-K3? So the question is, how are our teachers going to do this if they have their own children at home? Is that correct? So all of our teachers will be teaching from the buildings. So their children will also be, much like everybody else's children, in daycare and or on the hybrid model and in class. You wanna add to that?
Yeah, I'll add to that. We're sending out an announcement this evening to not just our teachers' children, to any of our faculty's children, and we are working out childcare for them, and we're working out the details with them because they need to be there, like you said, with their full attention on their students, and while their children are being taken care of.
Okay, so there's a couple parts to this question. The first part is, will students who are 100% virtual still receive the same curriculum? And the answer is yes, they will still receive the same curriculum. The other part was more of a concern, I think, that The students in virtual will not receive as much instruction as the students who come to school on the alternating day. And Dr. Thornton might want to weigh in, but I will say this. We did talk a lot about the schedule and what that would look like. These are 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. I don't think developmentally that they could be on a Zoom more than 2 hours a day. So to cover an entire school day for a young child like that would probably be near impossible. So yes, we're going to, and you know, a lot of the transitions aren't going to take place because you're sitting and you're getting the information in that fashion. So all of the curriculum will be covered between those days that are synchronous, working with the child directly on Zoom, and the asynchronous days as well in the form with videos.
So to add to that, we are not a virtual school. Public schools are in person. And so we had to do a lot of research and to see what a virtual model looks like. Virtual models have been around for probably over 20 years. And so we researched canned programs that are out there that parents could go to if they wanted to do that option with their children. So we designed it after that, but actually our contact hours with that Zoom are more than a canned program offers. A true virtual program has far less face-to-face instruction and a lot more independent work, which is why I think we stated at the beginning, if you choose that virtual model, what you're choosing is you are taking a lot of responsibility for your child's learning at home. And so that is why that is a choice, and you are not going to have, it does not replicate the in-school day of 7 hours a day.
Can I also just add to that that our instructional coaches right now are developing professional learning sessions for those teachers around virtual learning such that they would be able to maximize that 2-hour window while still following and honoring the instructional framework that we ask teachers to use in their classrooms. So we are providing training and support to our staff so that they can better understand and be able to deliver content effectively to children.
Yeah, so I do want to clarify that. So what we put together is a very good plan, and our teachers are going to be trained, and it is going to be a good virtual plan. It is not going to be what you saw in March when we were thrown out in one day. It is a good structured plan. It's research-based, so we feel like our students are going to get the full curriculum and get a good experience.
So the question is, will we be providing training resources to parents and caregivers around how to utilize the platforms and the devices and those sorts of things? And the answer to that is yes. So we will have one-page documents that are easy to read and easy to follow for parents and caregivers that specifically break down how to do this and how to do that so they can access the assignments or set up a calendar invite or email a teacher, access a Zoom account, those things. So yes, we will be providing those resources. So the question is, would students be able to take their device to their daycare or childcare provider with them in order to complete their assignments on the asynchronous days?
We have no problem with that, but I would say you need to contact whoever your childcare or daycare provider is to see if they are going to allow that for that time period.
Just add one more thing about if you have concerns about using any of the devices, Canvas, we're going to be providing some training videos that we'll put on our website to kind of walk you through how do you do certain things, because we know that's a concern.
Yeah, and a lot of those videos, the plan, and Miss Formella's here, she's going to be helping us with a lot of those videos and others on our team, but a lot of those videos are just going to be a couple minutes, so it's not like some huge file, just a couple minutes, maybe just exactly what you need or a couple of those questions. And so we'll try to chunk those so you can just grab the video you need on the questions you have.
We have one more question. So the question is, why is the virtual learning for the semester and the remote learning is only for the 9 weeks, and that we would revisit that again? So the easy answer to that is that they're on different options. So the remote learning for 4 through 12 right now is option 1. That's the in-person continuum. So those students that are on the in-person continuum, at the end of the 9 weeks when the board revisits where we are with numbers and what it looks like and makes a decision, those students could go to AB model. They could remain in temporarily remote. Things could be amazingly wonderful and we could be open 5 days a week. So those students would then move with the decision of the board. The students that are 100% virtual will remain virtual.
So let me just take you back to this model. I know it is a lot, and I know, and we've looked at this for days and days and hours and hours and hours and hours. So we've got it, but it took a while. It's a lot. So there are 2 options. Option 1 is an in-person continuum. So at any point that we are able to be in school, we'll be in school. So for pre-K through 3, they are able to start in school on this AB blended model. We're going to talk about our 4 through 12, but they're starting here on option 1. So option 1 could be traditional, we're in school every day. We're on an AB alternating day model, or we are temporarily remote where we're learning from home until it's safe enough to come back to school. That's option 1. Option 2, you're never going to come back in person. Does that help? Yes. Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah, so again, that question of why in-person is a whole year and virtual is a semester commitment is what our teachers are trained at and very good at is in-person instruction. And so they're going to be very good there, but we have to staff both, and we're going to do a lot of training for the teachers in elementary school and middle school. Those teachers are going to be only virtual teachers. They're going to have a group of virtual, so they're going to be trained in that. So say at the end of the semester, you still feel like, depending on what's going on with the health and COVID, you want your child to remain in virtual, then you have that option for the whole year. But you've gone through the semester, you've finished a semester, you're feeling good, and you think it's safe for your kids to come back, we can manage that shift. We can't manage the shift from in-person and then all of a sudden add some more virtual teachers. So that's why the difference. And I know that's complicated. We've had months to try to figure this out, and so it is very complicated.
Mm-hmm. What?
Okay, so continuing on, let's talk a little bit about the instructional technology. We've mentioned it, but we'll get a little more specific here. So for our students who are preschool, pre-K through 3rd grade, we'll issue them all iPads. For our 4th through 6th grade students, they will be receiving Chromebooks, and our 7th through 12th grade students will be receiving laptops. As far as the tech support, and this came up a little bit already with one of our previous questions, we are going to be creating tip sheets around instruction. So, some of those common problems that happen with technology, we're going to create some little one-pagers that as parents at home, you can quickly brainstorm, see, and hopefully solve with your children, and some of the students just right on their own will be able to use that to help solve some of the common problems. We'll also still have, especially when a problem elevates and a teacher might be involved at school, for instance, or you at home might realize this problem is really elevated, we still have our IT department and our regular help desk, help ticket type process as well. And so next, we're going to have Mrs. Formella, who is our coordinator of STEM, and it's going to be time for us to take a look at the learning management system that we described, and she'll provide just a little bit more about what that experience is like for the students. Okay, so I think we'll use the video, and then Ms. Formella might provide a little bit of clarification if we need it.
Hi, this video will get us familiar with the navigation tools in Canvas. Once a student logs into Canvas through their Clever account, they will see their dashboard. In their dashboard, there will be 3 areas: the global navigation menu on the left-hand side, the course card area in the center, and the sidebar on the right-hand side. The global navigation menu allows students to move around different areas of Canvas. The account icon at the top gives students access to the log out option. Dashboard icon gives students access to their courses through course cards. The courses icon gives students another way to access their courses through a listing. The calendar icon displays a global calendar that combines all the individual course calendars showing events and assignments with due dates. It's a great organizational tool. The inbox icon is for communication. Students and teachers can use this feature to email back and forth. The help icon provides access to guides and Canvas direct support. For more information on all the features Canvas has to offer, check out our other videos in this series. Happy learning.
And so that's just about a minute and 20-second video, just a quick blurb on the Canvas system and just some of the features. That's a nice example of the types of videos that we'll be posting to help parents and students. But I will say with Canvas, and you can probably see from that short little video, it's very intuitive for our students. They'll take to Canvas very quickly, but beyond the fact that they're just pretty good with technology usually, they're going to get training from their teachers, whether they're 100% virtual or whether they're on the in-person continuum, on the ins and outs of the Canvas learning management system. But hopefully that video also just shed a little light on the type of videos that we'll have as resources for you. So as far as device distribution and responsibilities around the devices, students will be assigned a Google account, and that will simply give them access to Clever, which is just our single sign-on portal. Once the students sign in to Clever, they have access to our whole suite of apps and won't have to sign into individual apps beyond the Clever portal. And it also gives them access for their Canvas account. Devices will be available before school begins for our students in grades 4 through 12, and also all of our 100% virtual students, because the first day of school for them will be a virtual day. Preschool through 3rd grade students, those in-person students, they'll receive their devices the second week of school. But to be more clear on that, we'll be getting those devices to those students early on. They'll be receiving some training from their teachers, and then you'll be seeing those devices coming home very shortly. All technical fees must be paid in full, and the device distribution form must be signed. So if someone has an outstanding repair charge or something like that, that would be an example of what that fee might be, and you would know that at home if that's you. Filtering is in place for all of our devices, so our devices are configured with filtering systems. Parents will have the option to purchase insurance for the devices, and your child's school will be distributing information as far as the particulars of the insurance that's an option for each of our families.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to grades 4 through 12. So grades 4 through 12, the option 1 is temporarily remote. So if you choose option 1, you are in favor of in-person, but right now to start school for the first 9 weeks, it will be temporarily remote. So let's dive into looking at this a little closer. So again, you have 2 options that you're going to choose. Option 1, you can come to school when we are able. That's the option that you want. It's a commitment for the entire school year. To start, we will be temporarily remote for the first 9 weeks. We will evaluate in mid-October to make a decision about the second 9 weeks. Option 2 is 100% virtual learning. We recommend that you have good internet access in your home. Parents are assuming a large role in monitor student learning. It's a commitment for the semester. So in January, we will ask what you would like for second semester. This is what the schedule will look like. So let's talk about elementary first. So elementary students will have, in grade 4, they will have their traditional courses. So block 1, block 2, block 3, block 4, they will have reading, they will have math, they will have Virginia studies. Those are going to be the 3 core subjects that your students will have in 4th grade. You'll see there are 4 blocks up there. That is because we have a block set aside for PE and their elective classes. So those will be offered on Zoom for the grades 4 and 5. So grade 5, again, you're going to have your traditional subjects. You will have reading, you will have math, and you will have science in grade 5. Those will be the 3 subjects. Plus you will have your PE and elective, and those will alternate days. In grades 6 through 8, you will be scheduled in your core classes, just like you normally would be scheduled in your core classes, as well as elective. And the blocks of time are just going to be established just as that. Core 1, maybe that's your reading or English class. You would be Zooming from 9 to 9:45. High school, same way. Kids in high school already have 4 blocks. They will be Zooming with their teachers on those 4 blocks. Teachers will Zoom on those 4 blocks. Students are expected to be on Zoom with their cameras on during the Zoom sessions. Okay, again, we've learned a few things from being out in March, April, May, June. Cameras need to be on. On Wednesdays and Fridays, those will be at-home learning days using Canvas. They will be your independent days where students will be assigned work through Canvas, and students will access it and do it independently. So let's talk about our virtual learning days a little bit closer here. Again, we're going to follow the Isle of Wight County School Framework. Our teachers are trained. It does work in a virtual model. Students will have a 4-block schedule. They will have up to 9 hours of live interactive instruction from their teachers. It's 3 days a week. Class meetings will be recorded each day and uploaded to Canvas for students to access at any time. So let's say you need to have a repeat of that math lesson. Well, it's on Canvas, you can view it. Or maybe you weren't able to view any of your lessons that day for whatever reason, you didn't feel well, whatever. You can do them later on, and they will be available through Canvas. PE and resource we've already talked about, but they will be one of the 4 blocks in grades 4 through 8. So we do have electives available. In addition to when you are Zooming live with your teacher, there will be a minimum of 30 minutes of independent reading for grades 4 through 8. And in addition to that, there'll be up to 30 minutes of additional work to do per class. So if you are a high schooler and you have your 4 core classes, you might have up to 30 minutes for each of those classes outside of your Zoom. Okay? Teachers will provide parents with an agenda and a schedule for the week. This will be on Friday by 5 p.m. For the following week, you will get a schedule of what the week will entail, what topics will be covered, what assignments will be due. Each student will be assigned a designated device We've already talked about that. Again, at the beginning of your meetings, they need to be charged and ready to go. And again, we encourage you to set aside a good place for virtual learning at home. Okay, now we're going to skip over to our asynchronous days, and Dr. Kale is going to talk about those.
So similar to what we talked about with the pre-K3 on their asynchronous learning days, students in grades 4 through 12 will have approximately 3 hours of assignments and work to engage in on those days, on Wednesdays and Fridays. So this could be the 30 minutes of independent reading, 30 to 45 minutes of an additional review material, maybe a 15-minute pre-recorded video around new learning, followed by some sort of follow-up assignment or assessment. Maybe they have another video, maybe it's a math lesson this time, that just followed up with another assignment, and then 30 minutes of ST Math. So that's really going, so this would be more like a 4th, 5th grade kind of schedule on an asynchronous day. Teachers, again, will respond within 4 business hours to parents' questions. And this time, like we said earlier, can also be used for that small group remediation, for one-on-one tutoring with your teacher, any sort of makeup work or catch-up work, and kind of addressing those learning gaps that we missed in the spring. For middle and high school, for those students, this could be approximately 4 hours of asynchronous learning on that Wednesday and Friday. So they should expect 30 to 60 minutes total for each of their 4 classes, to include viewing the videos and completing their assignments. And the same as with the elementary level, teachers will respond within 4 hours, and teachers can use this time for small group remediation, one-on-one, and feedback with students. The expectations for 4 through 12, very, very similar to what they've always experienced. So students will get grades. They'll have tests, classwork, and quizzes, just like they always have. They'll continue to receive that individualized feedback on their performance and on their assignments, on their assessments, reading conferences. They'll also be taking attendance. Attendance will be taken during those live Zoom sessions each day. On asynchronous days, just like with the pre-K3, it'll be a product-based metric. So if you're doing your assignments, you're engaging in the work that you need to do, then we will count you present. And if your child is going to be absent, again, contact the school, provide us a note, or make contact, let us know that they are going to be absent for that day.
Okay, so let's shift a little bit to special education students. So students with IEPs who are served in the inclusion setting or who are served in a self-contained setting but work on a standard curriculum, they will attend school on the same schedule as their peers are attending school. Okay, so if it's a pre-K through 3 student, they will attend on the alternating AB schedule just like a pre-K through 3 student. Students who are served in elementary and secondary intensive support needs in self-contained environments, those students will have the option to attend on the AB hybrid model, or they could be 100% virtual. And those things will be handled through an IEP decision. Walk-in related services such as speech or occupational therapy, we're going to try to offer those as a walk-in, but we really need to see what the numbers and how that's going to look to see if we can offer the walk-in. So stay tuned, more information to come on that. Virtual options, again, will be available through an IEP process if your child is at risk of severe illness. We will have those options.
As far as our career and technical education programming, so one of the things we want to make sure is when the opportunity is there for students, and for instance for our high schoolers, if and when they're able to come back into the school, no matter what CTE courses they were in the previous year, our instructors are eager to give those students opportunities to earn some of the certifications that they were hoping to earn between March and the end of the year last year. So that again is part of that Recover plan. Students scheduled in the double-blocked Career Academy courses, agriculture, building trades, cosmetology, culinary arts, early childhood education, nurse aid, our CNA program, and welding. So in those 7 CTE programs, they're double blocked. As you can see, they are intensive hands-on programs. Those students enrolled in the courses I just mentioned will follow the A-B hybrid schedule for those double blocked classes only. And then the other courses they're involved in, they would follow the schedule that Mrs. Getz showed you for the virtual. Students attending one of those 7 programs must provide their own transportation. The virtual modules will be utilized on the remote learning days for these programs. So our CT instructors do have virtual modules that will be uploaded into the Canvas learning management system, and students in these programs will engage in learning on the days that they're not physically present at school. Students who select the 100% virtual option will not be allowed to choose the double-blocked CTE courses that you see here. Because we just cannot offer this type of hands-on program through the 100% virtual. And then all other CTE courses. So all of the other courses that are single-blocked, and we have a plethora of CTE courses in our program of studies, for instance. All of those other CTE courses will be available to students who select the 100% virtual option. Athletics and clubs. So due to the fact that high school students will not be attending any in-person classes for the first 9 weeks, and the fact that the Virginia High School League has pushed back the start date, as we know, to December 14th, conditioning for all sports has been delayed until further notice. So the start date has been pushed back. We're delaying conditioning until further notice, and we'll keep the community updated as more information is made available. Students who choose the 100% virtual option, they will be permitted to participate in sports and clubs. And so that's been a pretty frequent question recently. And then all of our clubs are virtual at this point. And if things would change, we would, of course, get that information out to kids in those clubs in the community. So at this time, questions regarding the grade 4 through 12 options 1 and 2.
Okay, yeah, yes, question? Oh, I'm sorry. All right, go ahead, sir, while we're there.
You all spoke of the technical fee. What is the technical fee? How much money you have to pay? And will the sales tax fund pay the fee when you are incurred?
So the technology fee that was on that slide, what we were talking about there is we've been having laptops at the high school for years. There are students and families who still owe us for damaged laptops or have not returned their laptop. And before they get a device, they're going to have to pay that fee. So there's not a fee to get a device, to get an iPad or to get a Chromebook. And now we are exploring that option. And that's going to be explained at our next school board meeting. And the reason we're exploring that option is if we get enough parents to pay a small fee, then we may be able to do a group insurance on all those. So then, say the fee ends up to be, say, $40 or $50. Parents may say, I want to pay that fee, versus if something happens to my Chromebook, which is $200, and I don't want to pay $200 to replace that Chromebook. Or if there's major repairs to a laptop. So for the years we've had laptops, if there's damage, families, we have sent that in to be repaired, and whatever that repair cost is, families have had to pay. So that's what we're talking about, but there's not going to be a mandatory fee for anyone to get a device.
Let me add, this also includes elementary and middle who picked up iPads. We still have quite a few iPads that were not returned, so those would need to be returned to us before we hand out new devices.
You all have found a lot of Chromebooks. Can you give the option to the parents decide to buy their own Chromebook
So the question is, if parents want to buy their own Chromebook instead of using ours, can we help them get those Chromebooks at the same price that the school system got those? All right, so that's our tech guy. He's saying no.
No.
And I will say now, I'm hearing from other superintendents, and knock on wood, all of our devices are in. There is a major backlog with Chromebooks, and some of these divisions who have decided to go 100% virtual, and there is no option for them at this point, may not get their devices for weeks into the school year. So we were very fortunate to get them, and
Can I add? So I just got the answer. We cannot buy items for individuals. We purchase through a state contract, so it's not permitted.
okay,
We could if we would.
right. So.
Okay.
And for those of you who don't know, I'm going to say that's Mr. Jefferson on the Board of Supervisors. And the Board of Supervisors, through their CARES money, which is for the coronavirus, did help us purchase, I think it was $463,000 worth of Chromebooks. If we did not have that, we would not have had a device for every child, pre-K all the way up. So without that help, we wouldn't be able to do this. So that was a huge help to get us to this point.
Yes.
My question relates to offerings for high school students, specifically for AP classes, honors classes, and dual enrollment between the two options. Is that what drive the decision from last year?
So let me just clarify. So your question is, will we be offering those
Will they
things?
be the same in both models? Because those are just tiny classes that my students take.
So the question is, will students on option 1 and option 2 have the access to AP, dual enrollment, and honors level courses? The same courses.
Great question. We have gotten that one a lot. The plan is for kids who are enrolled in high school, they already have a schedule that they have selected. That schedule will still be their schedule on the virtual model. So the plan is, if you are in AP classes, honors classes, you will still be able to take those classes just as you would in person. For option 1 and option 2, the same classes will be available. All right, I'll get to you just.
So 1, 2, and then we'll get to.
So the question is, she was heard yesterday at the meeting that fourth graders would not receive science during this school year.
So they will not receive a daily class of science or a letter grade for science. Science will be embedded in their language arts and reading block, and we will focus on Virginia studies in fourth grade, and we will focus more heavily on science in fifth grade, and that has to do with testing. So fourth graders are tested on Virginia studies, fifth graders are tested on science. So on this schedule, where we have less time, we're going to focus on 3 subjects in fourth grade and 3 subjects in fifth grade instead of trying to cover all 4. Yes, thank you, good question.
Okay, then this young man right here had a question.
Okay, I promise. Yeah, go ahead.
And he said that he heard last night at the meeting that transportation would not be provided for CTE students. And so he wanted to know why CTE students were not being provided transportation when pre-K 3 students are being provided transportation. And also, how are CTE students supposed to be on a Zoom with their next teacher if they're in transit after their class?
You want to answer?
So for the transportation, that's a small amount of students that are spread throughout the county. There's no way we can run all of our secondary buses to do that. I have received that question and some emails from parents, and the suggestion we're making is if you can get there, then sign up for one of those classes that was shown in the first semester. If you're unable to get there, then work with your individual high school and guidance counselor, and instead of welding first semester, if that's where it's in your schedule, see if that can be moved to second semester, where hopefully we will be back in school.
What was the other part of that question?
How are CTE students supposed to be on a Zoom with their next teacher if they're in transit
Okay,
after
so,
class?
so because they're double blocked, you're either double blocked in the morning or in the afternoon, and there's that good break
2 hours.
between, right, 2-hour break for lunch, so you'll be easily able to get home, still eat lunch, and get on your next Zoom with your core classes.
Yes.
So last year before everything went haywire, y'all had planned on switching CTE to 1 week at school, 1 week to whatever they took. So my son's schedule had to be changed because you weren't off on that anymore. So now he has Farm 2 and Farm 3 for this year. So do I need to put him in option 1 so he can still take the farm class, or can he still do the virtual and do the farm class from home, or, are they actually gonna go to the farm this time, or, what are we, like, I've been trying to talk to his guidance counselor, and she has no answers, and it's like, what do I do, because he has farm class first semester and second semester.
So the question is related to CTE double blocked courses. This is talking about the Farm 2 and Farm 3, I believe? Okay.
Right.
And the question from this parent is, should her son select option 1 or option 2? And the answer would be, if you want your child enrolled in those double blocked CTE courses, you need to go for option 1, where they will be allowed on an A-B schedule, and if they can provide their transportation, they will be allowed to do those CTE courses.
And they will go to the farm on those 2
Monday,
days. Yes,
Wednesday?
on an AB schedule.
Yes,
That works out perfect, that's my days off for work.
Very good.
yes,
Okay, but that's exactly, I kept asking this guidance counselor.
right. And the reason that that can't be done in an all-virtual model is because that is hands-on working with the animals that we can't replicate in an all-virtual model.
Right, he was heartbroken when they were taken out in March and they couldn't
Right.
go back.
Absolutely.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
This young man here has given me a question here, and he says that as a senior, he's part of the JROTC program, the top 10% of his class, and he serves as a company commander and assistant staff member. That attending a service academy, his goal requires leadership experience. And so he says a big part of the JROTC program is uniform inspection and practicing drill and ceremony or marching. And it's a hands-on class like other CTE classes. So he wants to know, while we understand JROTC is a 1-block class, isn't it possible to use instructional assistants to supervise the JROTC students until the double block CTE students are finished with their classes? And what are the reasons that JROTC cannot be part of the hybrid CTE model?
So we had that question, I believe, a week ago, and Junior ROTC is not one of the double block courses, so it did not fall into what the board approved. We did investigate that. I know the high school principal reached out to Lieutenant Colonel Bedoin and asked for a plan that could possibly work, and he did not submit a plan with the requirements that the principal asked. And so at this point, there is no plan for junior ROTC. It's not double blocked, and that's kind of where we are at this point.
So good question. How are we going to facilitate driver's ed?
So we are going to be offering the in-classroom driver's ed virtually. And I can speak as a mom for just a minute. My daughter was in PE 10 driver's ed when we shut down, and she completed the coursework virtually. So we will do the same thing, just like all of our other courses. We will complete it virtually, but it can be done. Lots of anxious kids about that one.
Just one more.
How will we handle PSATs and SATs if we take them this year?
Good question. We are currently working on the plan for that. So I can't give you specific details, but it is on our list, and we are working on a plan to cover that. Once we have the information, we will share. Is that it? All right.
Hold on.
One more? Okay.
So her question, it's a clarification that, so she's taking physics, and so if she takes it on the virtual model, that she would stay home for the entire semester, or if she were on the in-person, she would have the option to return with the same class. So I think the bigger question here is who is actually teaching the class? Is it a Smithfield High School teacher?
Yes.
Maybe.
No, yes.
Maybe.
No, at high school, it is going to be Smithfield High School. Because the regional approach did not go
Right.
through in Region 2.
Okay, there's your answer.
Yes. We were trying to work out a virtual program in the region, and they could not get it together.
My mom also know I took the statement to the school right now that I cannot guarantee she will have students part-time, but we will with students options later. I want to know how my children come to this and right.
So the question is, for homes that don't have regular high-speed internet access, will there be exceptions in the attendance policy for students who are not able to be on the Zoom at the time?
Great question. Yes, there will be exceptions. We are going to be very flexible depending on what your specific situation is. And basically, if your child is completing assignments, staying in touch with the teacher, we're considering them present. That's not a truancy issue. It's only truant if no assignments are being done, we can't make contact with the student, then that would be considered truant.
Can I also add that through Canvas, when students go in and actually watch those videos, we can see, the teacher will be able to see that they have accessed it. So that's going to give her a little bit more, recognition that your child is doing what they're supposed to be doing. Right. Right.
Yes, ma'am.
My question, if I want to go with the in-person continuum, but because they are starting virtually temporarily, but I have an elementary student, is there some kind of accommodation that can be made to ensure that they can all start school together at the same time? Meaning, if my older ones have to be virtual, my little one can stay virtual, when it's time to go to school, I can send her off to school, or no, once the decision made is made.
I don't think I'm clear on what you're asking.
Claire.
I have kids in different grade levels, so right now, depending on what decision I make, my kids are split. You're saying that my older kids are going to have to stay home and do this temporary virtual thing, but my little one, if I say I want to send her to school, she'll be in school while they're at home. If I want them to all start going to school together, is that something that can be done where she will be virtual until they can start as well? That way I can see them all at once. And I only have to do childcare plans for one set instead of trying to accommodate all of the other stuff.
Okay, so the question is, you have children, can you just tell me their grades?
So I have, she's going into second grade,
All right, so 2nd, 6th, and 7th, and there are different options for these children. So for your 2nd grader, you could have the in-person option or do 100% virtual. For 6th and 7th, you still have the 2 options, but right now, 6th and 7th is temporarily remote.
Right, so,
But-
so what she's asking is, can they, I think what you're asking is, you want them all to be in the in-person continuum, and your 2nd grader can come now in that AB, and the others cannot. So could you hold that 2nd grader back and then bring them all at one time? We really cannot do that. Yeah, because they're going to have to be scheduled separately. But you can still schedule them all in the in-person, and then hopefully when we're back at middle and high school, then they're all on the
I w-
same, then they'll all be on the same day
So
at that point.
yes, even if when we return for 4 through 12, and let's say it's an AB day, they will still, all of your children would be A day or B day. We're going to keep families together. Okay, so if we return your 6th and 7th graders, let's say 2nd semester, we can come back on an AB schedule. Your 2nd grader, 6th grader, 7th grader will all be on the same schedule. So they'll go to school on the same days and they'll be home on the same days. To start off, yes. They're starting off on a separate schedule.
So we need to move on to transportation, and then we'll open questions again. Just real quick with transportation, drivers and students must wear a face covering at all times. And I met with the bus drivers last week. We had a great meeting with our bus drivers. A lot of our bus drivers are 65 or older. We are creating more than a 6-foot barrier from the bus driver's seat. Those seats will be emptied, so the children will have their mask on, the driver will have their mask, children will pass by. Children will have assigned seats, their name will be posted, and they'll go to those seats. And again, the face mask must be worn at all times. I'm going to reiterate what I said about the classroom. You're not going to get a lot of warnings. You're going to get a call from the principal, your child is not wearing the mask. We have videos on the bus. The first few, maybe that first week, we're going to have the transportation director riding these buses, helping to train our children. We may have other individuals helping to support this. But if you refuse to wear the mask, we're going to refuse to let you ride this bus. This is a safety issue for our drivers and for students. And if you saw my video earlier, a 6-foot distance, if you are found that you do have the virus, then that 6-foot rope would hit 9 other students on that bus if we had 1 student per seat. So it's a very serious matter with the mask. Approximately a 72-passenger bus can only fit 26 students. And that's 1 per seat. Family members may sit together in the seat. Parents will be encouraged to transport their children. And we are going to allow at elementary school, we're going to look at drop-off times for people who bring their children and try to arrange with parents. If you go to work early, we want you to be scheduled for that first drop-off time. If you know you don't have to get there, we're going to ask that you go to the second drop-off time, because if more people are driving, we all know the congestion we have at the different schools. So we're asking for people's help. And parents are going to be required on the information that you fill out for Thursday, opting in for transportation. So you'll check, yes, I want transportation for my child.
All right, so you've gotten a lot of information tonight, and we need to hear from you. So you've heard a lot from us. We need to hear from you. We have sent out last night, you should have received, if you have your Connect 5 set up, you should have received an email from Ms. Briggs about selecting option 1 or option 2 for your child. If you click on that link, it's going to go to a Google form that looks like this. And this is where you will make a selection for your student. If you select option 1, you're on that in-person continuum. So when we come back, your kid comes back with us. If you're on option 2, then you're selecting 100% virtual for the first semester, okay? Now, if you do not submit the form, your child will by default be placed on the in-person continuum. So we assume that you want to come back to school. So if we don't hear from you, we're going to register your child on the in-person continuum option 1, okay? So it came out in your email. If you didn't get it by email, it's on our website. It's on our Facebook page. I have paper copies here tonight if you need a paper copy. They're also available at your child's school. They're available at central office right here behind us. And we ask that you return those paper forms to the school that your child is zoned to attend. So return them to your child's school if you get a paper form. And then we need your selection by Thursday the 13th at 11:59 p.m. So what questions do you have for us now? The question is, if the JROTC instructor came up with a plan that fit the criteria, could they be part of the hybrid model?
We will definitely contact the high school principal and talk to him, and we'll investigate that.
Yes, sir.
Last night we were listening to Windsor on the little bit of signal we could get. We heard them say, I think you said, sir, don't sign up for virtual unless you have a good signal at home. We've got 3 kids in middle and high school. Then you said something like, more or less, just travel in your car where you can find a signal. I thought you were kidding. I thought it was a rhetorical statement. I did feel it's not. So you're going to have some 3 teenagers sitting in a single car, hot or cold, whatever it is, for 6 hours, 2 hours lost to lunch, living in the farthest reaches of the county, all trying to participate in a Zoom screen at one time in one car. I think that's realistic. I don't know could we do that? How are we going to manage that?
So we were going over possible options. At this point, we are still exploring how do we connect those families that have no cellular or that are in those areas. And we don't have the exact answer. Those options that we shared are what we have right now. That's not a great option. And we did talk about you could go and download the material and then watch it at home. But that interaction, like you're talking about, if it's virtual, that interaction with the teacher during Zoom, you wouldn't have that unless you do those options that I talked about. So we are not done exploring that. And like I said, we're going to work with technology. We're working with our individual principals. And once we get that form, then we know exactly who we're talking to. We're going to have those one-on-one conversations and talk about different possibilities. So I wish I had a better answer for you at this point, but we really don't have the solution. The county just does not have that access, and we just can't create it. But we are looking at different options. I know technology is looking at some capabilities, things called pedestals. So we are still researching, but we don't want to put those things out there if we can't provide them at this time.
We don't have resources that we want to have, but we've got apparently no obligation to transport children in a school bus. We're going to find all our obligation we need to transport meals all over the county all summer and during the year. We find obligation to do what we need to do. And I pay over $4,000 a year in property taxes in this county. I need some service for what I'm paying.
I know this is tough times for everyone, but I'm not belittling any of your concerns. We have been talking about all these concerns and how to do it, and the coronavirus we did not create. We are in-person public school system, and we are trying to provide those virtual services, and we do have areas that are just dead zones. So that's why we're still exploring things to do, and we're not giving up on those. And I hear your frustration. As far as the meals, those were USDA. We had funds from the federal government to do that, to pay our drivers and to feed our families. So we did that. Whatever we can do to support, we're going to do that. We're going to try to support you. At this time, the answers we gave you, that's all we had at this time. And that doesn't mean we're done and we're not going to try to help you. And so please try to be patient with us, and we are still going to reach out to all those. When you fill that form, it's going to be very specific, and even call your principal and let them know, and then we're going to try to address those concerns individually.
Yes.
When the school board comes back in October and wants to vote on how to proceed, will there be a community input for that time before the school board meeting so they can hear our concerns as parents?
So the question is, before the school board comes back in October to vote on what the second 9 weeks of learning will look like, will there be an opportunity for parent input before the school board makes a decision?
Yes, we will provide that opportunity and ahead of that decision. And right now, we're going to be providing information in early October to the board, and that information is about the information I receive from our local Virginia Health Department. It will also be information on how well are we doing in pre-K through 3, what is working well, were we able to stay open. All of those factors will go into that, and then we will have input before they make a decision. Once they make a decision at that point, similar to the pre-K through 3, at that point, there's no more school board meetings about where we are and what we're going to do. At that point, it falls to myself and our administrative team, and I think I said that earlier, but I'm going to work very closely with our local health department. We're going to track data, and we're not going to make those decisions lightly. We are going to err on the side of safety, and so, again, we may close a classroom for a 2-week period. We may close a school for a 2-week period, or we may end up closing the whole division for a time period. So that is why we had to have that in-person continuum for people who want to be in person. We know we have a lot of people who want to be in person. We want to be in person, believe me, and our teachers want to be in person. So that is our goal. And again, we just ask families, especially in the pre-K through 3, who choose in person, please help us with your children on those buses, in the schools, so we can be successful and show that we can get our kids back in school. Yes, ma'am?
I got 2 questions. My first one is, earlier you guys mentioned that there will be a separate area in the nurse's office if children are showing symptoms. What is the nurse office setup going to be? I know what it looks like right now for summer school, and that's great, that's one school, but when all of the kids are starting to return, what is that realistically going to look like?
So it's not going to be the nurse's office, so we'll still have our traditional nurse's office, and then somewhere in the building will be like a health annex. Some other room we will dedicate to if kids are systematic and they come home and they get isolated and they have to wait for the parent to pick them up, they will be in that area away from the routine kids who may come in and take their medication with the nurse or may have a scraped knee with the nurse, things like that. So they will be 2 separate spaces.
I have 2 more questions. A kid in a classroom showing symptoms, as a parent, what kind of notification would we get? I know you can't speak on the health of another kid, we go into privacy stuff, I get that. But what is going to happen for the kids that, even though we're socially distanced, it doesn't mean that we actually stay this way all of the class?
Right, so the question was, what kind of notification are we going to get as parents if someone another person's child is symptomatic in the class, or they may actually have a diagnosed case of COVID-19. We have letters that are prepared through the CDC, and we are going to communicate with parents. We're not going to name a student, but we are going to send out letters, and it will be school-wide, that a child was systematic and isolated in room 24 or with teacher Miss Smith. So that letter will go out. A different letter will go out if there's an actual case. And that's a great point, the contact tracing. So if we have, there may be, in some of these classes, there may be only 6 to 9 students on these AB days. They're going to be spaced more than 6 feet apart. And so if they did not get in proximity with a case that was found, then they will not have to be isolated. And we'll do that through the contact tracing and through the local Virginia Health Department to help make that determination.
And my last one,
Okay.
for now. I know that you guys keep saying that you guys have had conversations about all of this with yourselves and with the different teams and the different organizations, whatever. I know as parents, we've all had conversations amongst ourselves, family, all that good stuff. Other than the community engagement where we're limited in this kind of setting, when will we actually be able to sit down and have a conversation where as parents we feel like we're being included in the planning? That way you're not, in a sense, blindsided by some of the stuff that we have to say and how we feel, because it was brought up and addressed when you guys were having the conversations to make the peace.
So I would say when we had to start making these plans, most of these plans have to deal with instruction, safety, which we were following the recovery plan that was developed by the state of Virginia. And a lot of them are internal operations, which is our responsibility to make those decisions. And then we got feedback from those plans. So as far as parents developing those plans, we did not include parents in the development of day-to-day operations and or instructional practices that we were going to put forth. They were based on a lot of research from the state of Virginia and then other avenues. And then once we had those options, to share that with the public and get some feedback on those.
Not really a question, more of a statement, because I think from the couple of interactions that I've had with you guys overall, kind of know where I stand with it. At this point, do we not think that we should consider having these kind of conversations with the parents? Because there's a lot of conversations about us, and there's a lot of conversations where you're looking at research about us, but all of that research and conversations about us are still not happening with us. So there's things that aren't quite captured in some of the data. And some of the research that has been presented, no offense, but it goes in circles around what's actually being talked about. So I feel like we don't really get anywhere when we continue to circle of frustration, because it doesn't seem like it's a transparent conversation.
I guess the question is more parent involvement and transparent conversations in the planning. I don't know how to answer that any further, except for what I already said. The day-to-day operations is for our teachers, our professional staff, our nurses, our psychologists. The research from the state of Virginia that was developed in the document Recover, Redesign, and Restart, which had hundreds of experts in all those different areas advising us. And we did not have time for community forums. We had 26 committees, recess committees, and all those. Those are internal things that we have to decide how to run recess or how to feed people. And there is no way to involve everyone in the internal functions of how we operate schools. We don't do that any year. We sent surveys out for information when we needed it from parents to help inform us. And so I don't know how to answer that any better. And I guess that is a matter of opinion, and I respect your opinion. And we definitely will consider that.
just to add, we do have 17 pages of questions and answers from parents that Ms. Briggs is going to be posting. So it's all of these questions that parents keep asking, wanting to know. We've put all of these together in order to be transparent and to communicate what it is that we're doing, why we're doing it. And I think as we move forward into this setting, yeah, we're going to be open to your feedback about how things are going. We've not done this either. I mean, this is new. So we are going to be interested, in your feedback. But please check out the FAQ document that's going to be posted online. There's going to be a lot of information in that.
Oops.
Yep.
Okay.
Aware that on social media, the comments of the public is being blocked. It's happening routinely. I think you should know that if you don't want to know it. That's not a good signal to the public. Y'all notice that, I'm sure.
So Ms. Briggs just said the answer is they're hidden until they have a chance to review and unhide them because some of the language is inappropriate.
So the question was, are we hiding the comments and
hiding?
why we're not sharing them? And the answer is no, they are hidden until we release those. There is some language that's inappropriate in some of the comments, but we do share those comments, and we may change the language. And I will say we have, again, like 17 pages that we're putting out there. We could have said we're going to take the frequently asked questions and kind of group them. We're answering them all and putting them out there for parents to see. We are trying to be transparent, and I am going to be sending a message out probably tomorrow or the day after. And I think we all need to reflect that we want the best for our children. No one created the coronavirus. No one created this pandemic. Nobody wants this. And it's a time to be kind and patient and figure this out as a community. This is not something that any of us knew how to do, and we have worked tirelessly from March on to figure this out and make it best for our students and our parents. Will we accommodate every single individual situation? There is no way possible. So I would hope that people keep that in mind as we continue to move forward and try to serve our children the best we can.
I would actually like to issue a challenge to Dr. Thorne and the staff in this room. I'm a career engineer. I've spent 20 years problem solving, data analysis, risk mitigation. I would like to challenge you to think outside the box. Don't wait for someone to come to you. Work harder to address this young man's concern with ROTC. Don't wait for the principal. Go after it. Help him. Don't wait for this gentleman over here with the us ladies who don't have reliable internet. Go to it. See what you can do. Work harder. Work outside the box. It's basic problem solving. Get outside the box. I just like to challenge you to work harder. I know you are, but let's work harder. Get outside the box. Find solutions. There's a young man who wants to take CTE classes, but he doesn't know why. Also, as parents, maybe more of us need to get together, as some of us are, to figure out where we can put our kids in small study groups and pods, locations with internet. That's what I'm having to do with my sons. I work full-time, my husband works full-time. So I'd like to just issue a challenge to Dr. Thorne, the staff, the parents in this room. You're going to have to be creative, because I don't see another way for this. I just wanted to say that. I hate speaking without work, so I'm done.
You want to repeat that?
So she issued a challenge to us as members of your team and to you to work harder to find solutions to issues like the JROTC or the CTE students who can't get to their classes, and also to maybe work together as parents to find pods and places where students can gather in study groups to get internet access so that they can access the materials that they need.
Okay. We will continue to work towards those goals and solve those issues. And I will say last night, a parent from Carsville talked about a building, and I'm not sure where the building is, but he was organizing some parents in an area where they have very bad internet, and to host that and to see if we could provide internet to that building. We're following up on that. I was contacted by Christian Outreach in the community, and they're looking at hosting a space somewhere in the community for families, again, who have that challenge of internet, where they are providing the spot in that space. So yes, we are looking at every avenue.
So the question is, with the Connect 5, she is signed up for Connect 5, and she hasn't gotten this email or notification about these meetings. And so she wanted to know, did something happen, or does she need to go in and re-enroll? There seems to be a couple of different issues there.
Can you just please see me after the meeting?
Please see Lynn Briggs.
The voice of Isle of Wight.
So as we close out, if you continue, we'll take your last question, but as you continue to have questions, there's a Contact Us button on our division website. Please submit your questions through there. We will continue to post questions and answers on our FAQ document on our website. So we'll take this last question.
So his question is, he is signed up to take welding, and his concern is that school wouldn't open again at the change of the semester. And so even then, he wouldn't have transportation in order to get that certification. So he would no longer have that as an opportunity.
Yeah, so I think for that specific of a question, I really think we need to work with your building principal and your guidance counselor to see what options there are. I don't know what it's going to look like in second semester. So I think let's see what we can work out with your guidance counselor and speaking with your principal about your exact needs. Okay, so I want to thank everyone for coming. Again, please reach out if you have further questions. Have a great evening.
If you need a paper copy of the form, please see me.